This is Conversation of the Birds, a story set to music, new chapters released weekly. Written, composed, and read by Jamie Holcomb. You're listening to the introduction, two very short stories to prepare us for our quest. Once, the owl and the nightingale got into an argument. She started it. "Oh, you're so ugly and awful," she said, "and lonely and grim. Why, I'm a much better bird than you." "Thanks," said the owl. She went on, "All you do is sulk all day, and you're awake all night. It's disgusting. Nothing good happens at night, and you're no exception. Now look at me. My beautiful song is pleasing to all people. Yours scares them. My beauty stirs their hearts to love. You look like a monster." "Why are you telling me this?" said the owl. "Because someone's got to. You're awful," the nightingale sang. "Well, all you say may be true," the owl said, "but I have good qualities too. I hunt mice that infest barns and churches. The farmer and the priest both welcome me into their homes. In that way, I'm a friend to both God and nature. All you do is kill. You make people think of death. That's scary. I remind them of the beauty of life." "All you do is sing," the owl said, "and anyone with good judgment would be able to tell I'm a much better bird than you." Well, with those words, the owl really stuck his toe in his beak. Furious, for how dare this inferior feathered bat insult her, the nightingale trilled her call of distress. And all around the lone willow where the two birds had been debating, out of the smoldering sunset, there came flocks of doves, plump pigeons, bony cranes, storks, flamingos, and ibis, bulky-beaked pelicans and parrots, sparrows, twittering finches, and hook-billed fishhawks. One or two eagles hovered on the fringes, while above the crowd the vultures circled, waiting to see just how this fight would develop, and on the severed stumps and fallen logs that lay nearby, the crows sat in murderous expectation of the assembly of birds now gathered around the lone willow. "Isn't he awful?" the nightingale proclaimed. She leveled one tiny toe at the perplexed owl. "Look at his ridiculous goggle eyes, his tiny, worthless beak. Why, he can't even sing." All the birds jeered in agreement. "He's the absolute worst bird I've ever seen," said the pelican, puffing out his pendulous sack. The water birds around him sounded their agreement. "Now wait just a minute," cried the owl. "Who are any of you to judge me?" The heron squawked, the crows cawed, and silently, overhead, the vultures circled. "None of you has the right to say what's right," said the owl, but all the birds instantly agreed. "Neither do you." Well, the argument lasted for a pretty long time. Slowly the sun sank and the world tinted red, then purple, deeper the light dimmed until all of the arguing birds were cast in darkness. They would never come to an answer. On that point, they all agreed. So they decided to set out in search of someone who could tell them who was right. There's a story from another part of the world that I picked up in my travels. It concerns an idea called the act of truth. They say that any person who, throughout their life, stays true to themselves and never wavers from that course, if they are unshakably committed to their special nature, eventually that person will be capable of an act of truth. That is, they will be able to perform a miracle. The story goes like this. In a small kingdom long ago, a terrible storm was raging. There was so much rainfall that the river was threatening to burst its banks. All the people feared a flood would destroy their town and their fields. The king summoned all his men, and the townsfolk gathered together at the river to build a levee, but to no avail. The rain continued to fall, and the swelling, roaring river shattered their feeble constructions. Standing there along the river with the entire kingdom struggling to contain this imminent disaster, the king despaired. "We need a miracle," he said, and he called out, "Does anyone have an act of truth?" Well, all of his generals and soldiers could only shake their heads, and so they asked everyone, all the bewildered farmers and peasants gathered along the river. Eventually, far down the line, word reached an old prostitute. They were looking for someone with an act of truth. She said, "I've got one. Who can say how a miracle is performed?" The rain stopped instantly and the kingdom was saved. The king and his men searched through the crowd to find out who had saved them, and eventually they reached the old prostitute. The king kneeled before her. "I thank you," he said, "but tell me, how could you be capable of an act of truth?" And she said, "Merchants, laymen, priests, and kings, I've served them all." All of the shamefaced men had to admit that this was true. This has been Conversation of the Birds, a story set to music with new chapters released weekly. Written, composed, and read by Jamie Holcomb. Produced by Supermoon. Join us next week for our next installment. If you'd like to check out more from Supermoon, visit us on TikTok or at our website, gosupermoon.com. That's GOSUPERMOON.com. The quest begins next week.